once you connect to the natural world and you're out there and you marvel at the hummingbird flitting above a flower, or the bee pollinating, or the little worms after the rain, it's magic.
2, 1, 0.
Hello, welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. This is your host Orion. Thank you so much for being here. And if you're here, you probably are interested either in awakening or nature. And we're going to talk about both of those topics today and actually link them together. Fran Sorin is the author of Digging Deep, Understanding Your Creative Root Through Gardening. She is also a spiritual coach and nature and longevity evangelist. Fran believes that each of us has the opportunity to open our hearts and experience a life filled with love, well-being, deep gratitude, belonging, joy, and awe. The powerful portal for experiencing these states of being is to create a practice of spending intentional and immersive time in the natural world. The benefit of doing so are so magical. It is Fran's mission to guide humanity in opening up to the natural world, developing a relationship with her, and by doing so, creating a more profound relationship with our inner nature. In this very interesting and lovely episode, we spoke about what connection to nature can do for you and your well-being and why gardening can be a good idea, how to garden in an urban environment, the connection between nature and evolving your spiritual practice and your creativity, how to improve the way you react to the world in difficult times, and how to connect to people you disagree with on a heart level, regardless of whether or not you agree on something. And now, without further ado, enjoy the show. Hello, friend. Welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. I'm very happy that you're here. Thank you for spending some time with me today.
Good morning, Orion. It's great to be here.
It's wonderful. Before we start, can you share a little bit about your passion and how you got to it?
Well, from the time I was a little girl, I remember saying to my mother, I think I was 5 years old, and every night she would come and kiss me, and I just remember this, and I think it's the truth, although 50% of our memories are not actual memories, I'm told by Joe Dispenza. And I said, Mommy, what happens at the time of death? What happens to our soul? And she looked at me and she said, Darling, I don't know. So I've been fascinated with our souls and consciousness, humanity's souls and consciousness since I was a little girl. And it's been a passion that has taken me, call it spirituality, call it awakening within ourselves. But this is something I followed straight from childhood into college, throughout my adult years. And of course, my other passion is gardening and nature, very much evangelical about it. Feel very strongly that the more time we spend in nature, the healthier we will be, the kinder we will be, the happier we will be. And even though I've been speaking about it for 30 years, now there's tremendous research showing that that is in fact the case.
Right. You know, we spent 9 months in Israel during COVID in a tiny apartment that we rented. We went there to be close to a relative of mine that was going through something. You know, going through those lockdowns, and the only saving grace was because we live near Park Hayarkon Park.
That's one of my hangouts.
Yes, we would do long walks. It just was so beautiful to connect to nature. And when we moved back to Florida, I knew that I can never live in an apartment again. Like, thank God we're able to afford having a house, but just like being here in our house and close to nature and putting my feet on the ground every morning is so important to me. It's almost it helps me keeps my sanity.
Yeah, well, it sounds to me the word grounding has become a very popular word, but it really allows you, when you touch the ground and get outside, even if it's for 5 minutes, you're aligning all of your chakras and you're literally touching the earth, and it grounds you, period.
Right.
It's that simple, and our ancestors certainly knew it. All of the shamans knew this from Peru, all throughout the world, and somehow we have forgotten this. A large percentage of us have forgotten it over the past 30 years. Because my kids grew up in nature. That's the way they were raised, in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and they were outside playing all the time.
Yeah, when I grew up, I used to spend a lot of time in our backyard, and I used to watch all the feral cats, and I used to watch them having babies in the spring. At that time, I read Tarzan, and
Ah,
I wanted to be like Tarzan, and I wanted to be like a zoologist, and I watched all the animals, and I remember having a lot of imagination and really connecting to the animals and climbing trees. We had guava tree, especially one that I really loved climbing on. It was really fun.
it is fun, and very often because my reputation is as a gardening expert, garden designer. People will ask me what was your childhood like because a lot of people in gardening were really into nature and gardening nerds, and but no, I wasn't. I had a very middle class average childhood, but when I look back, I was incredibly touched by trees. I had two favorite trees I would sit under, or I would use as my North Star, or sitting playing with potato bugs at my aunt's house in Cleveland. So it's almost a looking back. I think Steve Jobs said that. It's only when you're midway through your life that you can look back and see the pieces that led to where you are today.
Yeah.
So now I appreciate my love of nature, although not as intense as a lot of people I know. As a child, I was extremely impacted by it.
Yes. And was your grandma gardening?
No, no. My mother was, part of my childhood was Dallas, Texas. The other part was Rochester, New York. And I still think of Rochester as my childhood home. But my mother was like, the gardener who went out and tended to the garden, and we grew some vegetables, but we lived in a small 3-bedroom house in a suburb. But something about it touched me. And, to this day, the soil, the earth, I've always called it gold. I mean, to me, ground and soil are so important because, in fact, that's the nutrients that our vegetables, fruits, everything needs. So I'm adamant about soil.
Oh, that's amazing. So because of COVID and there was all the food shortages, I thought to myself, maybe I should learn how to garden. And I attempted a very tiny attempt of planting sweet potatoes, but I actually have watermelons that are quite big.
I'm not surprised. That's great. Yeah, and you can. I know where you live. You can. And I always say anybody can garden, anybody can be successful. It's the only difference between successful gardeners and those who give up is the amount that you're willing to fail. And if I told you how many times I failed at growing certain plants or certain veggies, you'd be shocked. But I kept at it and kept at it. It's really persistence and knowing some basics.
Yes, I failed a lot. I feel like my sweet potatoes they grew to be so tiny, not even like tiny, tiny, tiny.
We need to have a talk about that.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I'm like,
A separate conversation, a separate conversation. There's usually a reason why.
for example, I had a watermelon grown, and I didn't know the size that it was supposed to be, and I harvested it way early. It was all white inside.
Oh, that's funny. It would be like harvesting pumpkins in the middle of the summer.
Yes.
You know who has the greatest, considered some of the best watermelon in the world, and Israel does.
Oh, okay. Yeah, oh, yeah, for sure. Yes.
Yes, it's huge here, really huge. But as far as growth, you're right, during COVID, people started growing their own food and gardening really took off exponentially because people finally had the time. And I do have a vision of everybody growing their own fruits and vegetables.
Right, and you can do it in an urban environment too. A lot of people have balconies that are
Yes, you can.
full of credible veggies and even some fruits.
You absolutely can. And community gardens also. Germany's great with community gardens. Where I lived, Philadelphia, had great community gardens. It's the will, it's the breaking through and the will. And now there's a great guy. He started off as a guerrilla gardener in Los Angeles, but in a rundown section. And he just took sidewalks, like curbs that were overgrown, and he started growing things
Wow.
and has taken over. It's a huge movement. I think he actually has a clothesline with the Gap at this point. And it goes to show you, you follow your passion, you never know where it's going to lead, right?
Yeah.
So cities are beckoning for people to come in. I know in Philly, I've done community gardens in Philadelphia. There are lots that are for sale for $1 there. And it's really a matter of a community taking charge and saying, come on, let's get together and finding ways. It's really the watering and the improvement of the soil. So
Yeah.
it's a very exciting time for gardening in the world, I believe.
What's the feedback that you get from people who started gardening? What happens to their soul? What happened to their consciousness?
Oh my goodness. It's inevitable. Think about it. First of all, you have to slow down when you garden. There are compulsive gardeners, and I was on the gardening circuit and very competitive. I know we had show gardens, right? It's like a show dog.
You mean like Aries, like me?
Yeah. You'd be shocked at the competition. There really should be a sitcom about it. But anyway, it's really a matter if you're going out there and you just teach yourself to pause and slow down and that you're not in a race and enjoy the process. It's hard not to be overtaken. It's hard not to feel magical. It's hard not to feel some awe. Because when you're surrounded by nature and you're digging in the soil on all fours at the most primitive level, we're following in the footsteps of our ancestors for thousands and thousands of years. And it puts everything, Orion, into perspective, that we're just part of this universe. We are, in fact, humanity is, in fact, nature. We are not separate from nature. We are nature. Because look at us. What are we? We're skin, mostly water, bone, blood. And what happens when we die? We're recycled into the earth. So once you connect to the natural world and you're out there and you marvel at the hummingbird flitting above a flower, or the bee pollinating, or the little worms after the rain, it's magic. All I can say is, you want to talk about transformation? I mean, I did years of therapy, and I always said to people, before you start therapy, spend time in the garden, because it is the greatest therapist of all. It really balances and offers a perspective on life. And it's gardening for the sake of gardening. There doesn't need, of course, the joy of seeing a seed germinate. I know how old your son is, and even if you take him out now and have him put in some sunflowers and seeds in your backyard, and he observes it germinating in the soil and then growing 6 feet tall, what can be more magical than that? Nothing.
Right. We did this with a watermelon, actually.
Well, then there you go.
Yeah, he planted the seeds and we watched it grow.
So how is his response when he sees with the watermelon?
He likes it. He takes pride of it. For him, it's very natural that the seed grows into a flower right now because he watched it a few times.
Well, he's lucky, because I used to have in my garden, I ran a not-for-profit for inner city kids in Philly, and they would come visit my garden. Most of them had never, they were in West Philadelphia, had never seen a garden like mine, let alone, but they had no understanding. And by the way, it's not socioeconomic. Plenty of suburban kids also with money. They really didn't understand that, you would go in the garden and see the tomato on a plant, or the cucumbers or the eggplants. And it was shocking to them. And when I would say to them with the little cherry tomatoes, come on, just take it off and bite it. And I love it with the suburban kids, everything had to be clean. And I'd say, no, it's good. The dirt is good. And when you saw them putting it in their mouth, the sweetness of these delicious tomatoes, what can I say? It's the richest thing in the world. It's so natural. And it's really my desire to continue that legacy and get the word out for everybody at any age that being in nature and gardening is such a natural way of living and such a healthy way of living. And it increases our happiness for sure, decreases our stress level, makes us, and now it's backed by research. When I started, there was no research, but makes us more generous, kinder.
Really?
Yes, yes. And makes us,
I know a few people that need to garden more.
yeah, a lot of people, for sure. And it doesn't have to be, I used to give workshops for Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, and people would come to my garden. You don't have a garden? Get a plant or two. You live in an apartment?
Yes, you can still do it at home. Yes.
It's relating, you're developing a relationship. So for me, the magic is connecting to the natural world, but what it allows you to do if you're present, and I call it the Zen of gardening, it opens you up to yourself and it allows you to see the best of yourself and just be. And the gratitude, as I said, and understanding rather than the top down that we're the masters of this universe. No, we're not. Humanity is not. We've been taught that, but we're not. That we're really, that nature is truly our teacher, our mentor, and our guide. So and it takes a huge weight off your shoulder. I mean, I did one community garden in West Philadelphia at a church, and I had Drexel University students, and I could just watch their faces, Orion, that just the joy of being there and saying they didn't quite understand it, but they knew it lifted a weight off of their shoulders, and they felt such an integral to participate in being such an integral part of the process was so beautiful.
Yes, and I like what you said before about, we all go back to earth and the most beautiful flowers and the sweetest fruits are going out of recycled little animals and waste products.
Everything is.
And out of such a wasteful product, the most beautiful thing grow. It's a really great metaphor to our life, I think.
It is. And it's only in Western culture that we don't talk about death, and it's not a part of our everyday life. And think about it, if we accepted it and just owned it, that, yeah, of course, my body's going to decompose. It's so natural. I believe in consciousness living on our souls. I don't know how, what, where, why, but our energy moves on someplace, but our body gets recycled. How lovely is that? And it helps to enrich the earth. There's a beautiful saying, it's wabi sabi, which is about impermanence and imperfection. And I feel that if we, as humanity, if we can be more accepting and embrace these philosophies, our lives would be richer.
Yes. And I think since I'm living on, it's not a big piece of land, but a little bit of land, and I've been watching a lot of wildlife. For example, one time I had a blue jay that was injured and I was trying to revive it, but it kind of like died just a few moments later. And we had ducklings that one of the female ducks, she had like 9 and then they disappeared. So a lot of, or in our butterfly garden, butterflies, they perish after a few days, and you do see like their remains, and seeing a butterfly in a spider net, you really get in close encounter with death, even if it's of this like tiny soul. You did something to me where it's not 100%, like it's still hard for me to accept death, but I see it more as a part of nature.
Yes, and that's what, when you garden or you spend a lot of time in nature, you become much more accepting of death. So yes, and it's interesting. I used to have a talk radio show in Philadelphia, a gardening talk radio show, and it was throughout the country. And I'd have truck drivers. It was on Saturday mornings at 6 o'clock. I would have truck drivers calling in. There isn't a person that I've ever met that doesn't have memories from their childhood about nature, something. And somebody would say, what's this rose bush that my grandmother had? Or what's this? And when there's something very, very sweet and primitive about all of this. So if you can embrace these feelings and bring them into your everyday life, and for me, I suggest to people, take a nature walk, even 5 minutes. Don't take your headphones, or your AirPods. Turn off the phone. And even if you walk around the block, or if you live in a city, just outside where you live, and expose yourself to some nature, be in nature. Prince Charles, King Charles he was very advanced in how he saw things ecologically. And when he talked about talking to plants and trees 30 some years ago, he was right on. And to this day, when I walk outside, and I'll say to the trees, good morning, good morning. And I hear myself, my inner voice going, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, wow.
Because without them, there's a selfish piece to this, but without them, we wouldn't be alive. And what I find fascinating, Orion, we live in an age of tremendous amounts of information. So people have all this information, but it's not always supported with feelings. So we know we should, a word I don't like, we should take care of nature, we should take care of our trees, but I don't know what majority of people actually feel connected to the natural world, as you were describing with the butterflies. You were describing the ducklings. I row on the higher cone in Tel Aviv. And everybody who's down at the river, we marvel when we see the new ducklings being born and how many survive throughout the season. And it's a childlike glee. I mean, it really is a gleefulness that doesn't need to be reserved for children. It's when you have that as an adult, what a gift that is.
Right. And people make fun of tree huggers. Actually, when you hug a tree, you balance your electromagnetic field.
Yes.
It's a part of grounding. As if we were a battery, and I know that when there is a lightning rod, they put it in the ground to take the
Yes.
electricity from the lightning into the ground. And that's what happens in our bodies when we put our feet in the ground, when we hug a tree. My son and I go for walks. We hug trees. He stops and he just does that since he's very small. Since he's, I think, I don't know, able to remember himself. He's been hugging trees on walks.
Well, it sounds like he's a great teacher, isn't he?
And I don't care what other people think because it makes me feel good.
That's brilliant. And that's really, and it goes to show again that our children have the right instincts. It's what we sometimes take out of them. And think about what the tree is feeling.
Yeah.
You know, we have a problem. We don't understand the intelligence of the natural world because they don't communicate. I'll say she doesn't communicate the way we do. So people tend to discount it, refer to the natural world as it, which keeps us disconnected. But when you look at a tree, I'll sit when I'm in Philadelphia or here in Israel, I'll sit in a park and just look at one tree. I have my favorite trees. And I talk to it and I say, what are the lessons you're teaching me? What is it you want to tell me? Sometimes I get an answer, sometimes I don't. But it's okay because something, just putting my attention there and my intention and focusing is doing something. I don't know what. It lowers my stress level and gives me a great deal of pleasure. It's delightful, would be the word I would use. So it's a win-win.
Yes. Just because somebody speaks a different language doesn't mean they're not communicating. Like you said, if you just sit and listen, you can hear a message, or it doesn't have to be a voice. It can be a sensation or a knowingness.
A knowing.
Yes.
I know that you know about this. Just a knowing, the instinct of knowing. And you don't have to second guess it. Something happens where a phrase may come out of you. That's it.
Yeah, and I know they experiment. I heard something with like tiny infants that have colic or are having a lot of problems. If you just put them on in the park on a blanket, or have them touch the grass, they calm down.
Yes.
But if it affects babies like that, it cannot be a placebo. I mean, because you can actually see that happening.
No, you're 100% right. And there are actually nature schools now. And I remember when my daughter was in the 5th grade in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and they actually had a class. You had to apply for it, and it was just lottery. They were going to spend the entire year, their curriculum was going to be based near a creek somewhere. And everything was going to be done, math, history, through that creek. And I thought, she didn't get into the program, but I thought, wow, what a way to learn, to have these kids in nature, hands-on. So there are so many different ways of embracing nature. And you asked me at the beginning when we began to talk, what are the benefits? I think, first of all, for years and years, and I went to seminary about 15 years ago, and meditation, everybody was pushing meditation. And I would say, well, I don't need to meditate. I meditate in nature, which is true. Because when you're out there, I mean, I do meditate. I am a pretty serious meditator, a regular meditator now. I don't know how serious. But when you're in nature, if you just calm down, it is a form of meditation. And the mindfulness of being present, whether you're gardening or whether you're sitting on a bench. And it's a great way of quieting your mind and catching if you're thinking about what's happening in the office or when you need to pick up your child or whatever, to just quietly pull it back in and say, no, I'm here now. I'm here now.
One of the more mystical practices of Judaism is ityahdut. Ityahdut in Hebrew means to be alone, where you go to nature for at least an hour and you talk straight to God. And there is no more, I think, appropriate place to connect to God than in the nature that God created.
I agree. I always say use nature as your church or temple or synagogue, period. Jesus used to say that nature is our church.
Really?
And it's true. Yes. I think many great philosophers believe that.
Yeah. So if you don't have a backyard, the thing that you can do is just go sit in nature at least once a week for as long as you can afford, and put your electronics aside and maybe bring a notebook and connect and breathe, and things will, I think it's so hard for us to get into a place of silence because we are surrounded by so many distractions. Even just being at home without even touching our electronics, we hear the beeps from our phones, or like for me, the dishes are waiting. There is so many distractions. But if we just take ourselves out of our very modern environment into nature and just have the discipline to sit in peace, things will happen. And for people that are having a hard time, it's just like gardening. You have to try again and again, and be willing to go there and sit for an hour and be frustrated and come back home until something opens up.
Yeah, and even, again, Orion, I think it's why at health clubs, people start at the beginning of the year, they do a membership, they start off gung-ho, and 30 days later, they're no longer going. So my philosophy with everything is bite-sized changes, because as you know, and I certainly know, changing habits is not easy. So what we're really suggesting.
Oh, tell me more about it. I have some habits I want to change, like YouTube Shorts.
Well, it's the idea is great, right?
YouTube Shorts, God, I get sucked into them. It's so,
All of us.
like, how do I stop that, for example?
We have to replace it. I don't know what you're referring to. We can talk about it if you want, but
No, it's just like some like clips on YouTube that are really, really quick. It's kind of like TikTok, and I love to consume knowledge, and I love new things and excitement. So it just caters to all of my needs in a very, very superficial and unproductive way. So how do you take yourself from a mini addiction like that? I'm not that addicted to it, but I do spend, I say, a minimum of 20 minutes a day on this. That is just wasteful.
that's 20 minutes of valuable. With your schedule, that's 20 minutes of valuable
Right.
time. I hear everything you're saying, and we do live in a society where we are rewarded. We believe, we've been led to believe, that the more information you have, the better. And there's just such a huge amount, whether it's for entertainment or, listen, some of the podcasts I listen to are top-notch science. I'm very interested in longevity. I'm a longevity evangelist. And so, you have Andrew Huberman and Peter Attia and Lex Friedman in other areas, and Dave Asprey.
Yeah, he's a friend of ours.
Yeah, you can spend your life listening to these guys, and at a certain point, that's just them. That's highly selective. At a certain point, you have to say, okay, how much information do I really need? And how much is it always, when you get into that mindset of more, 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 more? It's really a well that cannot be filled up with water. It just can't. And it's a race within ourselves versus, and I don't have the answer for this, I don't pretend to, but even earmarking 5 minutes a day. I love Andrew Huberman, who I do listen to.
Yeah, I listen to him as well.
Yeah, I think he's just a very special beyond being brilliant, his vulnerability. But I love what he used to talk about being in the sun for 10 minutes. His latest, he was on a podcast with Peter Attia, which I listened to. I need to listen to that snippet again, about being out as the sun is rising. Now, I'm out a lot during the day. I'm a rower, I'm a huge walker. But to be out when the sun is rising is a matter of 5 to 8 minutes. And even wherever you live, the benefits are huge. But beyond that, just think about if you time your day that way, that you get out for a 5 to 8 minute period in the morning, and with no headphones, you do not look at your phone, nothing, nothing. And you're just focusing on the sun rising and the beauty of nature. That would be a huge change in your life. Doing it, it's the commitment, it's the intention of this is worth doing. And to try it for 3 weeks and then see what are the benefits for you.
Right. And I really appreciate what you said about how much information do we really need to consume. We can, when we go out and we gaze at the sunrise, when we go out and we are in nature, we become an open channel to the universal Google and the collective consciousness and our guides and angels and God and whatever, and we get answers and we get knowingness that are actually relevant to our lives.
We do.
And can actually help us. I mean, sometimes we get answers because I feel like God communicates in different ways, where you can open a book and get a message, or you can see a video and get a message, or you can get a newspaper in the mail and never open it up, but that day you open it up and there is something there for you. There is that.
Yes.
And my yoga teacher said, I don't know who quotes it is, but the person that looks outside is dreaming, and the one that looks inside is awake.
Yes. I tend to agree with that. I tend to agree with that. Yeah, and your point also, what you get in those 5 to 8 minutes, whatever it is. If I wasn't doing that, I wouldn't notice the trees in that moment. I'm saying just that particular moment, there's like a breeze with the trees sometimes. And I look at it and I marvel, I say, and I just look and I go, oh my God, you guys are so gorgeous. It's like I'm talking to silently to friends. And, Albert Einstein, some of the great thinkers, Albert Einstein always took walks. I mean, Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Stephen Jobs, all of these, you solve problems in nature when you're taking walks or being with nature because your brain isn't working and your creativity is free to flow as it wants. So, yeah.
What are your tips to spark creativity?
Number one, be in nature. I'm a firm believer.
Yeah.
I am a firm believer in a morning routine. I am one of those that I get up very, very early. I'm up between 3 and 4 in the morning. And
My goodness, how do you do that? When do you go to sleep?
9 o'clock.
So I just saw one of my web exploration. I saw this guy. He's a billionaire.
Not Brian Johnson. Are you going to tell me Brian Johnson?
You know what? I don't remember his name, but he looks very stoic. He reversed his age. He's 45 and
It's Brian. I know Brian from Peter's group.
yeah, okay. And he goes to sleep at 8 p.m. every day.
Well, actually, yes, Orion, a lot of the tech people now do that. If you're in the world of the longevity world, I do not get the quote 8 hours of sleep, 7 to 8 hours. I'm not a great sleeper, but I've always been an early riser. So in order to get 6 to 7 hours of sleep,
Yes.
I have to go to bed earlier.
Oh my God, how do you do that?
Can I tell you, it is that's been a discipline. That's been a real discipline. I've literally had to change my life, but I was also really clear that I needed to improve my sleep quality. And remember, the indigenous tribes they get up early in the morning, and I have great admiration. I've been very connected to them since my children were young. And they finish their work in the morning, and then they spend the rest of the day playing. So they follow the patterns of nature. And nightfall, they go to bed. So again, it's really letting nature lead the way.
I think I need to go back to martial arts, which I used to do a very long time ago, because when I did that, I used to have more discipline. It's hard to have that discipline because I homeschool my child, and yeah, and there is so much around him. Like he's my life right now. I don't work a lot. I still run my podcast. I work a little bit, and most of my life is around, giving him those first few years as the in the most dedication that I can. And when it's nighttime and he's finally goes to sleep, which, like, listen, I enjoy every moment with him. He's like the most adorable being. I never felt a love like that, and I'm all about being a super mom. And sometimes I put myself and my needs aside in order to cater for my son, which is probably what every mom does. But
Not necessarily.
when it's nighttime and it's quiet, I'm just like, I just want to chill by myself and do.
I understand.
Yeah, I don't want to go to sleep. It's like my life just starting.
I see that my daughter has that same problem where she gets home, she works, and she's lucky that her husband, she has a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old, and she has a very supportive husband. But at night, she knows she needs more sleep. But she wants to read a little. She wants to watch her show on Netflix. It's like her guilty pleasure time.
Yes.
So it's tough to cut that out.
Yes, I go to an acupuncturist, and he's freaking amazing. He's like he's a very special human being. He's from China, studied acupuncture since he's 10 and Kung Fu since he's 4. And
Wow.
he can read your tongue and your eyes and your ears, and he's just awesome. But he checks my pulse, and he knows through my pulse where my kidneys are at. And weeks where I don't sleep well, my kidneys are weak. I've never saw this connection between sleep and my well-being, because you walk through your day and you're like, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Then I go to the oriental Chinese doctor, and he checks my pulse and he's like, did you sleep this week? And I'm like, because I think
Not so much.
between 10:30 and 12, it's where you're probably not saying it correctly, but some of your vital organs are rejuvenating. This is the time. And if you go past this time, you're taking away from that rejuvenation.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. I do know just after not getting a good night's sleep for one night that you're working at 50% of your level of cognition.
Not only that, I suck as mom when I don't sleep well. I'm more irritable. All my conscious parenting goes out the window.
Well, join the crowd of most parents. I mean, I think most parents are sleep deprived, but Matthew Walker's book on why we sleep really lays it out. It's pretty startling, the harm done when we don't sleep well. So when you ask me why, that's exactly why after I read Matthew Walker's book and he was on the circuit, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to make some changes. So that was the impetus for it.
So for somebody like me, what are some like mind tricks that you think I can do to get myself to sleep earlier? Do I need to set an alarm clock?
Oh yeah, certainly there are a lot. First of all, you have to, for sure. It's number one, committing to it. So if it's going to be 9 o'clock, that means by 8 o'clock, be reading a book, watching TV, anything light, whether it's Kindle, which I still do sometimes. You need to quiet down, but it's also your eating patterns. And I know it's tough to eat your last meal 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed. No alcohol. So really the Mediterranean, that's why if you live in Italy or Israel, where meals can be midday, the biggest meal, and then we just snack, have nuts or fruit later in the day. That's actually healthier. Those are some good beginning points. And setting your alarm clock and being rigorous about it. It's rejuvenating your soul in a funny way. It's really learning to take care of yourself at a different level.
Like when you're a mom of a little boy and you want to meet with other moms, they're like, okay, let's meet at 9 p.m. after the kids are asleep.
Are you kidding?
Oh, yeah.
Erica will do that once in a while with her friends, and then she pays for it the next day. And for me, I just, with friends, or if I try not to go out at night, I try to meet people during the day, and then at night, once a week or something, I'll do it. You can't. But no, it's really becoming like training your mind like an athlete would. And it's just not easy.
And what happened if we have travel coming up and I have a humongous to-do list and somehow my brain remembers everything that I need to do at 3 a.m. Not last night, but the night before last night. I woke up at 3 a.m. by myself and just like the thoughts kept racing. You gotta do this, you gotta do this, you gotta do this, you gotta do this, you gotta do this. And then I woke up and I wrote some of my to-do list. I was like, finally, now my mind is clear and I can go back to sleep. And then, oh, by the way, you need to do this and you need to do that. I had to get up again and do another to-do list. And then I went back to sleep. And then there was like 5 more items. And I kept remembering, okay, I need to do this, this, this. I'm not getting up. This. I had to memorize them like 5 times. But actually what helped me go to sleep is I massaged my palm.
There you go.
I don't know, maybe there was some pressure points and that relaxed me and I was able to fall asleep.
That's great. That's great. And if it bothers you enough, if it sounds like this trip is on your mind, if this was a way of life where this was always happening for you, there are some hacks you can use to help you.
Yes, please share some of those hacks.
What I would try at that point is it's kind of like a behavior that you feel you need to address right away. You're going to forget this list of things if you don't do it right away. And versus really training your mind to say, Orion, come on, you can let it go. It's going to be there. You know you have this photographic memory. It will be there three hours from now for you.
Oh, I told myself that and it didn't help.
Okay, well, for right now, well, when we meet up, we're going to meet up. We can talk about it further. It's not easy to change some of these behaviors. I do know once you're up, though, in the middle of the night, to stay in bed and force yourself to try to go to sleep is one of the worst things you can do. So it really is better if you just go, I think, to go into your living room, salon, whatever it is, and I'll read. And if I feel drowsy again, I'll go back to bed. If not, I'm just up and I'll put it to use. I'll put my time to use.
Yeah, I think that's my challenge because I'm fighting it because in my mind, no, you have to sleep. You have to sleep. You have a very long day today. Long drives to take your son to. Lots of things to do. You have a big to-do list. You got to go back to sleep. When we surrender and accept that it is what it is, that helps. And I think like massaging your palm, that helps me. And stretching, especially child pose, like put your nervous system into the parasympathetic nervous system, and that helps you calm down.
Mm-hmm. And maybe if a shower, a cold shower, if you want to wake up, if you want to go to sleep, a hot shower, anything that's going to soothe you. I was raised in the era where little sleep proved how productive you were. It was like a superpower if you didn't sleep a lot. Isn't it funny how things change?
Yeah, when I grew up, my mom used to tell me that when I was young, I used to tell her, sleep. Sleep is a waste of time. I would sleep 4 hours, 5 hours, and run around because I loved life. I still love life. I'm just more tired loving life.
Yes. Well, having a little kid can do it to you.
Yeah.
And homeschooling a little kid will do it to you also.
Yes.
But there is nothing that's more beautiful than being a mom.
Yes, thank you. With you being in Israel, how do you feel like, I mean, it's been turbulence politically, a lot of turbulences lately, and I guess during COVID, like how do you keep your sanity, cool, connection, putting your mindset back into a happy place even when you see darkness happening around you, or feeling safe even when there are so many things that might be inducing fear? In your external environment?
Well, first of all, it's a practice. It's a lifelong practice, isn't it? For me, it's about being aligned or being whole. So it's really the aligning of, in a literal term, the aligning of the chakras. But how that takes shape, actually, COVID was very easy in Israel, I must say. We were one of the privileged families. We all live within 3 blocks of each other, my children, my grandchildren. So I was very lucky. I moved in actually with my ex-husband because I didn't have where I was living. I was subletting, just wasn't safe. It was near the beach, and there were it was, as you recall, three years ago. It was very different than where we are now. So I lived with my ex-husband in his place for 2.5 years. It was phenomenal. We saw each other, and even when the rules were on lockdown, I would be out at 4 o'clock walking in the morning just to get exercise in. but it allowed us time as a family. We benefited as a family, which is, I realize, rare. It's just rare. So COVID was, we were very lucky during COVID. I would say I've been in and out of the United States a lot over the past 6 years, and I saw when Trump got elected how so many of my friends were upset who voted for Hillary Clinton. And I would tell them, I would listen to them for 3 minutes and then say to them, okay, that's it. Because it does no good to maintain a stance of anger or toxicity. And I feel the same way here in Israel, whatever you believe or don't believe. I mean, we all have our breaking points, and I've had mine here where I just was exhausted and so sad at the state of affairs here to see this little country torn apart amongst its own people.
Yes, it's awful to watch. Because I think as an Israeli, one of the things I was always most proud of is even regarding of our differences, we're all in this together, and there's this undercurrent unity that is now feeling like it's falling apart, and that was so odd for me. And I think it did start in COVID with the vaccinated versus unvaccinated, right versus left.
You're right about that. And the fabric, a friend of mine who actually is Israeli, he's moving to La Jolla. He has children there, but he
Nice.
feels that Israel has changed a lot.
A lot.
I feel, look, I've been coming to this country for 40 some years. I love it.
Wow.
It's, you know, the word balagan. It truly is a country.
Balagan, mess, chaos. Yes. Big balagan.
Big balagan, who you can tell your friend. But that's part of the charm. It's part of the charm.
It's very chaotic. It's very intense.
And what's interesting is in the 2022, the happiest countries, the countries for well-being, this was pre what just happened. Israel came in fourth. Can you believe it, Orion?
I can, because there was this unity, like with all the chaos. It's almost like when 9/11 happened in New York, people came together and people were like there to support. Like sometimes where there is like outside dark forces and big horrible things that happen, it actually brings things together. And I think this was the common thing throughout the years in Israel. Oh, there are terror attacks, there is this, there is that. We're in it together.
It's true. And even now that does, the terror attack that happened recently, and there's been quite a few, Israelis do come together over that. It's just an interesting little country. I think what Americans don't quite understand.
Then when you said interesting little country, when I came to the States, I was very Israeli, very straightforward, very, very blunt. And I had a girlfriend of mine who was an artist, and she opened my eyes, my cultural eyes to art. And she took me to this gallery opening, and I looked at some of the art and was like, "Ew, this is kind of ugly." And she's like, "Shh, you don't say that. When you see something that you don't like, you just say, this is interesting." And you're like, oh, that's a very interesting little country. That's why I was laughing.
It's true. It's true. But I will tell you this, Israelis are so kind. If you fall or you're in an accident, they are there to help you. So what's on their tongue comes out. Sometimes you just want to say to them, thank you very much enough. On the other hand, they're extremely warm-hearted and kind. And I think what Americans don't quite understand is this is existential survival. So to try to compare the American democracy with what's going on in Israel, you really can't. And I think it's easy to just say, okay, the situation is similar, and I don't want to get into the political piece.
It's also very easy to be an environmentalist and tell farmers how to grow organic crops before having your own garden, and see how many years of failure and natural disasters and how hard it is to actually grow organic. But we can always come from, from an outsider feeling like so mighty, and say, oh, just do this, just be there. If you haven't walked in a farmer's shoes, if you haven't been to Israel actually there, you actually don't know what's going on. You can have a lot of very fancy ideas, but if you haven't experienced it or walked in someone's shoes, you can't really tell them what to do, or how to be, or really understand it.
That's a point well taken. And what I love, it's a game I've been playing, and I think Daniel Kahneman, who happens to be Israeli, he's a Nobel Peace Prize and Nobel Economics Prize. He's now in his 90s, and I think he lives in California. To be able to take the other person's, be able to speak the other person's argument. So if you're very progressive in the United States, then talk about why Trump voters, be a Trump voter. Why? And feel compassion and the same here in Israel, whatever your political beliefs are, you should be able to see the other person's viewpoint. You don't have to agree with it, but also have compassion for them.
And also, like, I think something about our society, some people are like, oh, either you agree with me or not, but we cannot have a conversation, which was pretty normal in previous years. People from different opinions sat at the same table, able to have a conversation and share what they feel and agree to disagree, where it seems like, especially with the young generation, if you don't feel or see things the way I do, then you are in a way my enemy, and I even humanize you and not even have a conversation with you. That's wrong. That should be changed. Because if you have 10 people in the room, you can have 20 opinions. People will never agree with each other.
Well, we know that, don't we? Israelis and Jews, for sure.
But we can see beyond our differences and actually have be able to communicate on the soul level, because we are all sparks of God. And at the end, everybody wants to feel good. Everybody wants their family to be safe. Everybody wants to be healthy. We have basic human needs. So if we leave the external hurrah and media brainwash and we just like connect heart to heart, our life, our communities are going to be so much better.
Yes, I agree with you, and I think when you said we want safety, we also as a mammal we have a deep yearning to belong to a tribe, and if you can drop needing to be right and understanding that our similarities are much stronger than any differences we may have. And for me, as I've gotten older, I can take on the mantle of being an elder at this point and hopefully have a little wisdom, which is the best gift you can give to this world while you're alive, while we're in this skin before we drop our bodies, is to work on yourself and to go inside. Don't judge other people. Work at not judging other people, because we all do, but really do the work on yourself. And anytime you see yourself judging somebody or making comments, that's a clue to go inside. What about me is similar to this person? And that's the biggest gift we can give to the world.
Yes, because everything is our mirror, everything is our reflection, everything, every quality we dislike in somebody else, somebody that we didn't embrace within ourselves, even in the worst people in the worst situation, because as human beings, we are capable to do great good, but each and every one of us is absolutely capable of doing great harm. So we don't, when we see the things we don't like, instead of looking at them, we should like just turn it in and see like what is in me that I need to feel whole about. What is in me, or a trauma or something from childhood that I need to heal in order to be in peace with this situation.
Yes, I agree with you 100%.
So before we say goodbye for now, and friend, this was so nice. You're such a lovely person.
Oh, I'm so glad we finally met each other.
I know, and I can't wait to see you in person and give you a big hug in person. And
We will, we will.
yes, yes, yes. What are your 3 top tips to living a stellar life?
A stellar life, humility, gratitude, and really, I would say beginner's mind. Beginner's mind. Always have an open mind. Don't think you have the answers. Being willing to be open to anything that comes along and to live without knowing. You know, we live in a society of performative art, right? Not knowing and admitting that you don't know and feeling okay with being uncomfortable about it. As far as humility, again, we live in a society where we're being taught to always talk about ourselves and our accolades and how great we are. Well, none of us, we're all just part of nature. Go out if you feel, You need a whack, go out and, sit under that tree and look at that majestic tree that's been around for 500 years. And it's not showing off, it's just being a tree. And
Oh,
then
I love
finally,
that.
gratitude is something that people say, it's part of our lexicon. It's become huge. I'm grateful. Well, do you think you're grateful or do you really feel grateful? And I'm not judging.
Nice, nice. Because this can be like another hype word where you take the meaning out, like it's like saying, "Oh, I love you. Oh, I really love you. I love you." But do you really? Like when you say I love you, mean it. I guess like be one with your word. If you say I love you, mean it. If you say I'm grateful for you, take a moment to feel it in your body, drop to your heart. Am I really grateful right now? Or and if you're not, just make yourself because there's so much to be grateful for.
Yes, and I believe that some people don't. I believe we've all had instances of feeling grateful if we can go back. But during the day, when like, I'll use the term open your heart, or you may say let it drop into your heart. Some people don't even know what that means, and that's okay.
Hmm.
But there are some wonderful teachers out there. There's mystical texts. There's so much to learn, and if anybody's interested, they can contact you or me about it. But you have to be curious enough to say, I really don't understand this, and there's something about it. I want to get inside of myself more. What is this about opening your heart? Who are these wise teachers like Ram Dass and Eckhart Tolle, one of our great living masters? But there's so many that have passed on. So it's endless. We can go on and on and on, but keep it simple and really own your values. Ask yourself, what are your values? And 2 or 3 things that mean a lot to you that you would die for, and then go after them voraciously.
Yes, amen, amen. Where can people find you? If they want to contact you, learn from you, get your book.
Oh, well, my website. Oh, and I have a website, but they can also write me, Fran at fransorin.com, and I'm on Facebook, and I've kept a very low profile the past few years since COVID, but I'm beginning to come out more, and
It's time to roar, Fran. It's time to roar.
I'm getting ready to roar. Yeah, no, I've been quiet, but you're the precursor now, but it's time.
Uh,
It's everything in life has a timing to it. So this has been such a pleasure.
so true. Just like in nature.
Yeah, like nature. That's right. But this has been such a privilege and a pleasure, and I really look forward to spending time with you and Stefan and David.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Fran. Thank you. And thank you, listeners. Remember to have humility, to have gratitude, and to have a beginner's mind, to open your heart and know that sometimes you don't know everything. And when you have a beginner's mind, you can learn, experience, and be so much more than you are experiencing right now. And have a stellar life and a phenomenal day. This is Orion. Till next time.